Good morning, Raymond.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Very well, sir. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. It's sun shining outside. I've even been for a walk already, actually, so I'm actually sort of feeling reasonably positive about the day ahead.
Yes, no, it was the same with me. I walked the dog at 8 o'clock this morning, so
all right, good man.
It was it was good, and then I came back in to do a bit of emails shooting.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
I think we've been kind of blessed. I think with the fact that during this last 7 or 8 weeks we've actually had decent weather, which I think has made it a little bit more bearable for a lot of people. So long may that continue.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think I don't know where, especially in Scotland, we're not used to this. So it's
the best it's going to get.
Yes, that's it. This is a holiday in a sense. So. Look, what I'll do, Raymond, is I'll first of all introduce myself, and then I'll pass the baton over to yourself to introduce yourself. My name is Chris Lowden. I'm the Commercial Director at 920 Recruitment. We are a specialist boutique technology and digital and engineering manufacturing recruiter based in the city centre of Glasgow. We operate across the Central Belt as well as the rest of the UK. Raymond, a bit about yourself.
Sure, Chris. Thanks very much for the opportunity, Chris. I'll just say a few words. I'm not crazy about people who give their whole CVs up front in a thing like this, but I'll probably just give a little bit of context. I spent almost 30 years, I guess, working for some of the world's largest technology, probably most influential technology companies over a period of time, in a variety of roles: finance roles, sales roles, marketing, and then into kind of management and leadership roles. The most recent of them, obviously, being at the Microsoft Corporation. Where over approximately 13 years, I held a number of very different roles, quite a range of roles actually, latterly in executive positions, and finally as Director of Microsoft in Scotland, which is a role I held and I enjoyed immensely for over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Since stepping down from Microsoft, I've worked as an independent non-executive director or chairman on a range of SME boards, pretty much always where there's been a strong focus on growth and scaling the business up. Although I also worked with a startup SaaS business, which I advised and guided to a trade sale actually in within 4 years actually of startup. A number of other things I've kind of done as I've been going along as well. I chaired the Institute of Directors in Scotland for 4 years, was a board member of the SQA for 8 years, and sat on a few other government boards mainly in the education space, and also in a few charity boards, Young Scot and a few others. And I currently chair Project Scotland, which is a charity based in Edinburgh around volunteering, which I've been doing for about 4 years. I've worked, and I probably continue to work across a wide range of sectors, various parts of the technology industry, obviously, given my background, through to the area of like global ground transportation, clothing industry, photographic processing industry, public and third sectors as well. But probably the biggest part of my portfolio at any point in time has always been in the technology sector, where I work with boards or exec teams in getting their strategies right, building the right teams, the right kind of teams at all levels. And I often would take on the role of mentor for the CEO, or in some cases other members of the exec team, and sometimes for the kind of emerging talent as well. So I would do a bit of that. Having said all of that, Chris, I have to say that I have never experienced anything like the last 3 months in all of my career. People throw around, I think, all sorts of dramatic words and statements and expressions. But this really, really is an unprecedented situation in every respect. And I mean, personally, just for the right, I've seen half of my portfolio of clients move from strong, profitable, forward-looking businesses to literally focusing on survival. Hopefully, temporarily, that is the case for them, but it has been an absolute shock to the system of some of them. On the other hand, my technology sector clients are coping really well. Still operating largely business as usual. And I appreciate that's not the same for everyone in the technology sector, but the businesses I'm currently working with are doing very well, even in the midst of this unusual situation. So that's kind of where I am at the moment in a very summarised way.
Yeah. Well, look, I think first of all, to hit on that, your CV speaks for itself, Raymond. That you've got probably as one of the best CVs I've definitely seen in the technology market up here. So thank you as well for coming on today and lending your thoughts and ideas and what you've seen recently. I thought it would be very important for the 920 network to hear views of someone of your caliber in the technology scene as well. So thank you. So look, I suppose to just kick this off, what would be quite good to hear from you, because of the multiple boards and you're advising on at the moment. What have you seen over the past few months? What have been maybe the main concerns business owners have? I know you've highlighted survival there, but how have the technology market, in your eyes, reacted to this up here?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. I mean, overall, I would say, I think you'd have to say that the tech sector has done a really good job of supporting every other sector, to be honest with you, into the new worlds that they've now had to go into in terms of remote working and the mobility side of things, and conducting business on a much more digital and online way. So, I mean, I've seen a number of the tech companies run off their feet, particularly in the first month of this, as they've been working really hard to get all of their clients, into a situation where the ones that could do it could still continue to do business. So I think you would have to say that, as a general rule, they've coped well and they've responded well to the marketplace. But I would say that there are a few things I would highlight. I would say that you need to keep in mind about companies in the tech sector. There are a number of key factors which I think will define whether technology businesses continue to thrive or start to find things a little bit difficult. And I'll give you a couple of examples of them. I think when you're, as a tech company, you need to look at what is your customer base. And if your customers are, if you have a heavy predominant base that's in some of the worst hit sectors, that's a challenge and that's a problem, and that's one that you really have to you're going to have to struggle to deal with. If you have a good mix and a good balance of customer base, that will be really, really helpful. So I think that's, everybody goes, oh, tech sector's probably okay because of that. But I think you have to look at what the tech sector's got in terms of the base that it's working with. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing you probably have to look at, and it varies massively across the sector, how robust is the business model? If you're a business that's tending to kind of live month to month in terms of, like maybe not quite the focus on pipeline and kind of getting that pipeline managed really well, and the focus maybe on recurring revenues or building a recurring revenue model, again, it's going to be tough, I have to say, if you're in that situation. Whereas if you have a very strong focus on recurring revenues within your tech business, whether that's if you're a SaaS business, whether it's a business where you do a lot of technical support work and you have a lot of support contracts and so on, if you're in that kind of situation, that will stand you in really good stead. Yeah. And I think, particularly at a time like this, I think also, again, looking at what the offerings are that the tech sector has, if you look at, if it's cloud-based and SaaS-based and so on, that's the place to be, clearly. Mm-hmm. If your business at the moment is dependent on on-premise installations and, software and training on-site and so on, that's a challenge, actually. So I think it's, you're going to have to work a lot harder on that front. So I think there are so many different segments and types of companies within the sector. So there's probably no single answer to the question, that applies to all of them. I do think all of these factors will make a difference. And I think we'll talk a bit more probably about, what do you do if you're in those kind of situations. But so I think in general, the sector's done well, and it seems healthier and more robust than a lot of sectors. But I think it's very much dependent on the segment of that sector that you're in.
I think it's a key point that you make in the sense of the sector you're in, because one of the things I keep on repeating to myself, to my friends and family, they go, oh, but I mean, technology must still be continuing. It's remote working, it's cloud-based. Yeah. However, one thing people don't think about is actually our sector service. So it's whether or not where are they at this point in time. And so, I've seen businesses that I even had in the team on here a few weeks ago, from Flow, who are a Flow digital pharmacy. They've seen their turnover double in the space of a month. So, but then there's other businesses I've spoken to that are just, as you said, survival mode. So I suppose one of the things, given your experience is heavily within this, in the technology sector, one of the things, how do we respond to this? In Scotland, how does the tech sector respond to this pandemic? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, and I guess, nobody has all the answers at this point in time. But if I think on the things that I'm talking to my clients about and the advice I'm suggesting or giving to them to say, here's the things I think we need to do to respond to it. There are a few things that are probably worth highlighting, I think. I mean, first and foremost, at this time, and really at all times, take care of your people and your customers and focus on your people and your customers. I know it sounds really obvious and really basic, but it's more important than ever. And, it has to be done. Safety is a massive factor on a number of levels at the moment in all organisations, irrespective of the sector. And so just do the right things and stay, really take care of that, actually.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to take care of that. And obviously stay in touch. Stay in touch with your customers. I mean, don't try to phone them up and try and keep selling them stuff. But stay in touch with them. Let them know that you're there for them. Let them know that you're willing, if they have questions, if they have anything, they can talk to you. And obviously with your employees as well. So make sure that there's a constant flow and a constant exchange. So I think that's something that's really just an important backdrop. The other thing I'm saying to a number of people at the moment is the world is changing, really. You must stay relevant. Staying relevant is this situation is going to change business, I think, forever. And It's not, in some cases, it's not going to be drastic, but for some people, it will be a drastic change. Mm-hmm. And I think it means that businesses have got to pay very close attention to what are their core propositions, their core offerings, and whether they are still relevant as the world is changing, as the markets are changing, and as the expectations of your clients and the demands of your clients are starting to change because of the pressures they're facing. So you must keep a massive focus on staying relevant. And kind of allied to that, I guess, as well, really, is be adaptable. You need to, yes, some of it's a bit about kind of locking stuff down and making sure we're kind of consolidating and we're doing sensible things, but this is a time to be adaptable. Despite the horrible situation we find ourselves in, there are opportunities emerging out of this. And while I would say it's absolutely unacceptable to behave in any kind of ambulance chasing manner, that's not good practice and should absolutely be avoided. It is okay to be receptive and open-minded to opportunities, and opportunities are emerging and will continue to emerge. So to be able to adapt and be ready and open to adapt, I think, is a very, very important thing as well. I think the other thing is, given that many people have a little bit more time at the moment. I appreciate some people, if you're an online pharmacy, you might not have a lot of time at the moment, but for a lot of organisations and a lot of exec teams and senior people and business owners, there is a little bit more time at the moment. And I think I would absolutely urge, and I'm working with some of my clients and doing this at the moment, take the time to fix the key things in the organisation that need fixed, whether that be the structure, whether that be some things that have been neglected, whether it have been some people in development areas. Now is a good time to tackle these. Because, let's face it, the things that tend to need fixing are usually the things that have been broken for the longest time. So now is a time to kind of grasp the nettle on that and try and address. You're not going to fix everything, but you can use this time, obviously, to do a little bit about that. Obviously, we talked about people before, but I think focusing on developing your people, there's a chance at the moment to look at the skills of your people. Even in the business as it is at the moment, most businesses would say, okay, I've got this level of skill set and this range of skill set, and the business I do kind of demands something like that plus more. But rarely do people get to the point of saying, well, we need to skill up, we need to do the things to actually make sure we're ready. So now is a time to think about some of that and make some little changes and some little bits of, even, and this, I think this is the case actually, even for staff who are maybe are furloughed. They can't work for you when they're furloughed, but they are allowed to do training and allowed to do some skills development, personal development stuff. So it might be an opportunity to help them with that and give them something to focus on as well, while they're in that situation. But the last thing I would say probably around this really, it relates really to the being relevant and being adaptable points. I guess you've got to think about the shape and the size of the business that you have and what it needs to be coming out of this. For some people, it'll just be the same because they're in a reasonable place. But for some people, that's not. For many people, that's probably not quite the situation. And I think that work needs to have started, and hopefully has started already for many people. think about what you are going to be, because you want to get this balance right between obviously not carrying more costs than you want to, but at the same time, you don't want to cut the critical mass of people, because when the ramp up starts and the world does really open up again, you don't want to be behind, and scrabbling around trying to find the skills and the resources to do it. So it's a tricky balance, I think, for exec teams and for business owners at the moment. But if you spend time on it, and I think it will be time well worth spent.
I think we've been attempting to do that as well. So it's, if you look at some of the stuff we looked at, I mean, we didn't have a YouTube channel. This is something we've obviously just kicked off. So straight away, because it's funny, Andrew Dobie highlighted these points in terms of do things that you didn't have time to do before.
Exactly.
And fix the things that possibly should have been fixed ages ago. So our website, our content on our website had to be relooked. We're continuing along those lines of looking at it. So it's great advice, and I totally agree.
It's always easier said. It's always easier said than done, of course. But it is, if you just give some time to it, you will make progress and things will happen.
Yeah, and I do think it's also quite relevant in the sense when you talk about, looking at the staff availability at the moment, and because I do honestly think that in the next month or two, well, hopefully, fingers crossed, you're going to see this boom straight away. Especially, we notice it straight away. We're in recruitment, so we're generally the first people you call when suddenly we need to go home again. Because there was a business that I worked with over in Glasgow that they had about 15 live vacancies that went on hold overnight. So and I've been in constant, as you said, advice again, constant communication with them throughout, and they thoroughly do believe by mid-June that will all go live again straight away. So
that's good.
Yeah,
it's encouraging to hear actually that in your industry you're still placing people, you're still recruiting. I mean, that's encouraging, I have to say. I know it's not the case across the board, but I just think that's really important.
Well, it's that's the thing that you obviously highlighted as well. It's the diversity in clients, because a lot, don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying that there's tons of our clients that are recruiting at the moment, certainly not. But we have a diverse range of clients, so much so that there's ones from like Flow that are a digital pharmacy, but also there was a new client I'm currently onboarding this morning. So there is people still recruiting. Which is positive.
Yeah, it's good.
So, look, Raymond, the next question, because I've written some questions for you that I obviously shared with you earlier, but given you are a board advisor and non-exec on a number of technology businesses, what has been, that was obviously a number of different bits of advice you gave there, but are those the main parts that you've been advising on that so far?
Sorry, in terms of the actual technology company specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, there's been a mix. Obviously, there are other businesses as well. I mean, we have a situation in one business where it's a global ground transportation business, which was looking like it was going to have its best ever year. It had major contracts at the Tokyo Olympics lined up, major contracts at the Euros, at the Climate Change Conference in Glasgow. They had just come off the back of doing the NATO conference in London.
Jeez.
And literally, in the space of 3 months, that business went to zero revenue. And so that's a whole different set of advice and a whole different set. I mean, because you're talking about obviously survival in that kind of situation. You're talking about how do you get the cash, the funding to see you through, what was looking like it was going to be your most profitable, your most successful year, and all of a sudden this happens. So you're then looking at, like the business interruption loan scheme and how that works and exactly how you kind of get through that. And that obviously took a bit of time and so on to get going really. But also it's about all the things that you can't turn up at those, looking for those kind of loans and that level of money and investment unless you have really put your own house in order as well. So it's about, in those kind of situations, it's also about the need to act quickly and actually, decisively in terms of what you do. And some of that is obviously not always pleasant, but it's one of those things that you want the business to survive, and sometimes there are just certain decisions that have to be made. to allow that to happen, to put you in a position where the banks are saying, well, look, that looks reasonable. I can see where you're coming out of it, and the plan ahead for when you come out of it. So it's a very different kind of set of challenges to the ones that in most of the tech businesses, for example, where it has been much more about, how do we keep this going? Just how do we actually make sure our customers, we can deliver everything we need to deliver as remotely as we can. It's a lot of data center based stuff. It's cloud based stuff. A lot of, whether it's software development, DevOps stuff, a lot of that work can be done clearly at home, where people don't have to be specifically in the office. So you've got two very different situations, actually. An industry that's just literally through no fault of its own. It's an industry that was also hugely dependent, apart from the big events like that, it was also dependent upon the investment banking world, where companies would come and they were going to float on one of the markets, and they would go to the investment banks, who would go basically around the world looking to drum up significant investors. And the work that was involved, and the logistics involved in taking these senior teams all over the globe, basically on the ground transport level, that's just dropped off a cliff, obviously, as well, clearly. So it's just such an extreme, compared to some of the tech businesses where, their business is even if it's not thriving, it's going along okay. So it's quite a variety, and there are other businesses as well, actually, we're involved in where they're much more in, I suppose, discretionary spend-based worlds, if you like, and those things a lot of those things have just been hit really, really hard. Manufacturing capability has been literally closed down. It's starting to open up a little bit again now, and obviously because they've had the challenge of then what do you do to come out of it? How do you get the social distancing thing correct within an environment? I was on a call with a number of people were on it, but the chairman of Walker's Shortbread was on it, and he was talking about exactly how they managed to get all of that operation back in order by literally redesigning the process, where nobody was any closer than 2 meters away from anybody else on the production line. And I think there was one process that required people to be slightly closer, and they actually managed to sort that out by having a perspex screen between those two individuals that had to be slightly closer. So in every business who's kind of about to come back in and put a foot in the door again, they're going to all have to think about those things. And it's a combination of that, and a combination, as I said earlier on, about thinking, what shape do you need to be? What shape and size and structure do you need to be as you come out of this? And those are not easy. And the answers vary, obviously, for different businesses and different sectors. But it's a challenge for businesses and business owners, boards to get around.
Yeah, look, even I mean, simplistic to us. I mean, Gordon and I have been talking about this for the past few weeks, as well as Karen, and around how do we bring people back to the office, and it's about setting up that plan and putting steps in place. People are talking about prospect screens at the moment as well. And it's so there's all that piece, but interesting as well that I noticed someone mentioned on is that also the best way to do it as well from for the environment point of view. What happens when we get past this pandemic and then we have all these plastic?
Where do they all go?
Yeah, precisely. So there's all these things.
Easy answer.
Yeah. So I suppose let's try and shine a bit of positivity on this. Over the last few months, have you seen? Has there been any sort of surprising successes that you've noticed come out through this?
Yeah. But to be honest, I think for a lot of people, it's probably quite hard to see the silver linings at the moment in the cloud that we have hanging over us. But there have been some, and again, I'll highlight a couple from my own personal experience. I mean, one of the tech businesses I'm involved in, they have literally they won 2 significant contracts in the last month, specifically on the basis that they will deliver these full projects without ever having to go to site and ever having to do anything. So everything will be done, complete remote delivery, implementation, including an implementation of an ERP system, all the associated training and stuff with that. That's what the customer demanded, because it was a customer who was in a situation where they felt, we don't want to lose this time. We still think we can make some significant changes and improvements to our infrastructure, and they decided they want to do it. But their criteria for being able for awarding the contract was that you could do it completely remotely. So that was quite significant, actually. And we won a couple of them, which is remarkable. And I guess it's that thing about going back to adaptability or relevance. If you can be relevant, you can do that. Then that's important. I mean, let's face it, it's going to be. I think the way that we are working now is going to form a part of the way that all organisations are going to work from here on in. I mean, there's some interesting things. Even at a board level, actually, in a couple of the businesses, we've taken the time to revamp the board agenda to make sure that we actually spend more time talking about strategic stuff and about stuff that's focused on future direction than we do, which was just almost a kind of a hyped up operations discussion. So we're actually making some decisions. I mean, obviously the operational stuff has to be focused on and continued, and we have the right group of people involved in that. But it was a chance to actually say, look, let's think about where we're going here. We need to think more about the future, particularly now, because the future may be different. So I think it's really it's really important actually to take time out. So there have been successes in small ways, and in some cases in contracts that have been won. I think that's you have to take some positivity from those things and try and say, well, we can do more of them, we can repeat them. The fact that we won those contracts, as I say, on a complete remote basis, you don't want to go out trying to flog that basically to everybody and trying to, but it's good for people to know that and to know that those customers have trusted you to do it on that basis, because that will maybe stand you in good stead as well as we move further on. One other thing, actually, I would say, there's one other interesting thing, and this has happened across a few of the businesses. The way that things have been done, always been done, sometimes has hidden a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of things that just shouldn't have done. The fact that we're now working the way we're working, and that there's a more kind of formalized team communication on a more regular basis, because obviously we're trying to stay in touch with people, stuff is being floated to the surface and stuff is bubbling up to the surface way quicker than it was before. And so I think there's lessons in there actually in terms of when we resume, that we will not lose what we've actually gained during this period of time, and will ensure that kind of information and that important information is actually being found and dealt with at a much quicker. And I suspect that's happening across a number of organisations.
100%. No, I think there's so many points you raised there, and especially in terms of you're actually focusing on strategic and future ideas at board level, rather than, and you're right, I remember we would sit there and we go, well, let's think about that in the future, whereas the future is now at a lot of boards now. So it's great. It's great.
It's incredible how, I mean, everybody knows that it's the right thing to do, but you're right, it ends up being crammed into the last 30 minutes of a board meeting and say, yeah, we'll come back to that. Yeah, that's a great, we need to talk about that. So now we
do our website. No, totally. No, it's we've been chatting about that. So it's funny. I'm getting all red faced now, actually thinking about that. We did actually have that half an hour. That probably was seen as a bit of a airy-fairy sort of. The future is now, and I think that's an important statement. But yeah, okay, so. I suppose, like, here at 920, we deal with a lot of, well, predominantly the businesses we deal with are SMEs and part of the startup community, as you know, Raymond. At the moment, how do you foresee going into this? I mean, and I know you don't know the exact answers to this, but investment, how companies looking for investment, where do you see that going over the next 6 months?
It's a tricky one, this, to be honest. It's definitely going to have probably a negative impact on some companies who are currently looking. I've had a few conversations over the last month with some of the private equity guys, some of the different organisations up here in Scotland, and there's no doubt actually that they are re-looking at deals that were in progress. And it's sadly not because of like anything that the company specifically had done wrong, but because of the sector maybe that they were in, or the sector, if it was a tech company that they were servicing. And some of that actually has made them stop and go, oh, hold on a minute, actually, if they were depending on that becoming a big target market for them, etc., then that's not necessarily where we want to be. So they are looking at this through slightly different lenses, I would have to say, compared to what they were 2 months ago. And it does, I mean, the point they were making is, look, they're still up for investing. They're still up for doing it. But they are obviously looking at, okay, where is the where are the right target markets, where are the right sectors, where is the customer bases that we know are going to be still lucrative, and so on. And I think, as well, as I kind of alluded to earlier on, what's the business model that they have in place? Where is the focus really in terms of how they generate pipeline, how they actually do, is it a recurring revenue business, is it a subscription business, what is it? They're looking at all of these things and a number of other factors as well, and paying more attention to that. I think the sad thing probably is there will be, maybe not necessarily from the tech sector, but there will be a number of businesses that have been looking for investment, that were probably going along quite nicely and probably looking like they were going to get investment. And I think that might now be tighter and might be harder for them to get. So I think it's going to be a challenge, to be honest. But the other thing, on the bank side as well, I mean, I mentioned earlier on about the fact that obviously we're now starting to see the release of some of the business interruption scheme loans. But I think, again, what the banks are looking for, I mean, any bank who's saying to anybody now, yeah, let me see your last 3 years' accounts, is really just not tuned into the world at all, actually. So, I think the key thing, anybody going to the bank looking for funding, whether it be the business interruption stuff or whether it's general funding, I think the key thing is looking at the future, looking realistically and pragmatically about where your business is, how it's affected, and where it's likely to come out of this particular situation we're in at the moment, and painting a good, positive and realistic picture of where that's going to be, and base your request for whatever the funding is on a sensible version of that. And I think also making sure that you let the bank know that you have behaved appropriately during this kind of situation. You've taken some of the right decisions within your own organisation to ensure that you're acting as efficiently and it's optimising things as much as possible. I think if you present the bank with the combination of those things, the banks are still up for lending.
Yeah.
So I think that's still the case. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Both the private equity guys and the bank, they've got money. They want to lend and invest that money, but I think they're just looking a lot more critically at where they do that.
Yeah, because one of the things I would have said is that I've got a couple of close friends who work in banking from a development point of view. However, they've been one of the big ones in Glasgow. That we all know that they haven't ever been as busy as this before.
I can believe it.
Yeah, so I mean, things are still moving along, and in particular, one of the clients we're currently on board and is doing quite a bit of work within the fintech space as well, and they're still moving along as can be. So in terms of banking and finance available, and we've seen it all ourselves personally, that they are still lending. They're, okay. So, but it's a good point you raise in terms of look at my last 3 years of history. It's actually more about where your business is going now. What is your business model? What's your business plan? Your strategy?
Exactly. Yeah.
So no, great point. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you wish to bring up at all, Raymond?
Hey, to be honest, no, I've enjoyed the chat, Chris. Actually, and I hope some of what I've said may strike a chord, maybe in one or two places. I mean, I think we're in a funny time at the moment where and I guess if we look at the situation we're in, and we look at the people who we're dependent upon at the moment, we're talking about nurses and care workers and cleaners and delivery drivers. So so a lot of people amongst the kind of probably the lowest paid in our society, which is a kind of it's not a situation I think that's particularly good, and I sincerely hope that we don't forget about that actually. But to bring that to the business side of it as well, there's a lesson in that I think for us as well, and I think we need to focus on all of the people who work for us. We need to kind of make sure that we value, we respect, and we treat all of the people who work in our organisations, regardless of their job role, or seniority, or their status, or whatever. And I think if we do that, and if we kind of set out to try and do that in the midst of all of the other challenges that we've got, we will absolutely build stronger and more committed teams, which ultimately will deliver stronger results for everybody. I mean, it's true what they say, great leaders first and foremost build great teams. And I think that's a very true statement, actually. And it's great teams that obviously make things happen at the end of the day. You need leadership, but get the right people around you. There's a great quote actually from, I don't know if you've ever read any of Patrick Lencioni's book, business books. They're really in. And there was a book about kind of teams and teamwork and the dysfunctions of teams and so on. And he wrote a quote that said, "Not finance, not strategy, and not technology. It's teamwork that remains the ultimate competitive advantage, both because it's so powerful and so rare." And it's an interesting point, actually, an interesting quote, and I think it sums up a lot of things. So anyway, I thought I would kind of finish the conversation maybe with a bit of.
That's it's so true and brilliant. But look, thank you so much. Your insight has been fantastic today, and I'm sure lots of people will take a lot of information from that today. And it will, as you say, I think a lot of it will strike a lot of chords there with people. So thank you so much for your time today, Raymond. And this will be going out this afternoon. Thank you again.
Thanks for the opportunity, Chris, and take care. Good, best wishes to everybody at 9:20.
No, thank you. Take care of yourself and
all the best.
All right, thank you.